Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Oh, good day. This is more good stuff.
This is always really, really interesting. So, Egyptian archaeologists unveiled discovery of 59 sealed sarcophagi. And when we look at like that one there, that has to be a child. It's so small. Um, it's just fascinating the timing of some of the discoveries. And, we're going to delve a little bit into Edgar Cayce in this one. Because these are the times that he spoke of so much with the earth changes, and we were talking about like timelines and things. A lot of his timelines were off because he was expecting the earth changes to come earlier than they have. However, what he envisioned does seem to be coming to pass.
Yeah, it does. Timelines are a really difficult thing to kind of get right.
So we see archaeologists in Egypt have announced one of the most dramatic finds in decades after 59 sealed sarcophagi were uncovered from the ancient necropolis of Sargasso outside of Cairo. The mummified remains date back about 2,500 years, so they say, with more expected to be found in the coming months. Saqqara, 32 kilometers south of the capital, is one of the world's most important archaeological sites, designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in the 1970s. Part of the necropolis, basically like a city of the dead, right? Necropolis, of Egypt's ancient city of Memphis. And it's famous for its 5,000-year-old step pyramid of Dosher, which has recently undergone a $10 million restoration. Although there is still much work to be done to identify who was buried there, experts believe the mummies were priests and officials who once sanctified the vast cemetery. The discovery of so many sealed sarcophagi, several retaining their original ornate colors despite a long passage of time, is one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in decades. And this discovery will go all over the world because it's the most important discovery that has happened in Egypt in 2020. Zahi Hawass, who many believe really is just, he's there to cover things up, for the powers that be. The renowned Egyptologist and former Egyptian Minister for Antiquities Affairs told Arab News on Saturday. That moment I cannot explain to you. It's a passion when you discover a mummy for the first time that was sealed thousands of years ago. I always say that you never know what the sands of Egypt may hide. And the site has already yielded some remarkable finds, including limestone and wooden coffins, a huge cat cemetery, a rare collection of mummified scarab beetles, a bronze statue of the god Nefertam, and a wooden obelisk decorated with hieroglyphics, which were also recently discovered. We thought there were only animal mummies like cats, crocodiles, snakes, and lions, Dr. Mustafa Waziri, a Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities of Egypt, told Arab News. But the team of archaeologists were stunned when they uncovered the first of the closed coffins from an 11-meter deep burial shaft. I found a big mountain of debris, and in my heart I felt something and said, this is the place they should start digging. Waziri said, recalling his first impressions on the site when he arrived in 2018. And here they are unsealing some of them. Very, very interesting stuff. As we see here, secret tunnels beneath the Sphinx stir hopes for undiscovered treasures. Of course, when you hear of secret tunnels under the Sphinx, immediately you go straight to Edgar Cayce.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I feel that a lot of our history might be under there too.
So Dr. Zawi Hawass, again, is apparently not convinced that anything of value can be found there. But the famous Egyptian monument known as the Great Sphinx of Giza may still harbor some previously undiscovered secrets beneath it. So we shall see. So during one of his trances, Edgar Cayce, who died in 1945, saw that refugees from the lost city of Atlantis buried their secrets in a hall of records under the Sphinx, and that the hall would be discovered before the end of the 20th century. And you know what? It very well may have been, just they didn't tell us.
Right, exactly.
And so it's really interesting, too, when we look at other things that he said as well. And let's see, it wasn't in this article, but when he was talking about the destruction of Atlantis, here we go. The story of the Hall of Records begins with Atlantis. Near the end of the days of the Atlanteans, the readings explain, this is Cayce's readings, there came the first egress of people to the Pyrenees and into what later became the Egyptian dynasties. Images from these areas seem to represent a disaster. The first of the eruptions that awoke from the depth of the slow cooling earth in that portion now near what would be termed the Sargasso Sea first went into the depths. So the Sargasso Sea is this area here around Bermuda. And it's an interesting spot, obviously, because this is also going to be part of the area of the Bermuda Triangle over here. So, is it leftover technology that causes that issue with the Bermuda Triangle? How advanced were they? Again, Atlantean Gardens, Robert Seffer, he has really kind of dedicated himself, it feels like, primarily to really uncovering the secrets of Atlantis and of the people of Atlantis. And he brings up Cro-Magnon man, again, slightly physically larger, bigger brain capacity, Cro-Magnon. And, I was pointing out, like, that might be the dominant lineage of Atlantis that then spread out and, is basically what we would call the Caucasian race. It's interesting, really, to look at these migrations of peoples after this disaster. So this is the area that Cayce was talking about. And that area first went into the depths. With this, there came that egress of peoples that aided or attempted to assume control, yet harrying them with all forms of anomalies they gained through that as for signs, for seasons, for days, for years. Hence we find those various portions of the world, even in the present day, some form of that, as was presented by those peoples in that great development in this, the Eden of the world. The reading is referred to as astronomy and thereby associated with the development of the calendar. That as for seasons, for signs, for days, and for years, what these people carried were the records of the movements of the stars and the constellations. And the readings tell us where they settled in those periods when the first change had come to the position of the land. There had been an egress of people from the Atlantean land, and they built a city near the edge of the Sahara. And again, it's interesting to note that I think about a year and a half ago, somebody, I forget who it was, did a big video on Atlantis and was saying that Atlantis is buried under the sands. It's buried under the sands of Africa and the Sahara. It could be that is one of the first outposts when they came over in here, and then eventually their culture ended up giving us the Egyptian dynasties. And, I do feel that's the case, because I feel there's a disconnect, and this is just me, between the people of the Indus Valley and the people of Egypt and Sumer. I feel that Egypt and Sumer are more connected than the Indus Valley, although they were all trading with each other as well at certain points.
I feel like that's one of the biggest things in history that they really want covered up so that we can't get any fine details. These are things that would be imperative to our growth today, and I just feel it's all chaotically covered up.
We also learn about the first pyramids built in Egypt. We discover the reading of Miss 993 in the Cayce readings. Individuals' names are represented by numbers to protect their privacy, who had a past lifetime in Egypt during the period of the Great Pyramid's construction, and Ra-Ta was the priest circa 10,500 BC. And so if we look at the Younger Dryas main event of big disasters of major biblical proportions, approximately 11,700 years ago, we're in the greater time period. The readings go on to describe 2 lifetimes before that one in the land of Og, another one in Egypt, earlier when the first pyramid was built there. So this proves there were pyramids in Egypt before the Great Pyramid itself was built. The readings tell us that the same country had been submerged for nearly 250,000 years since civilization had been in this portion of the country. When Ra-Ta and his people arrived to Egypt, they conducted archaeological research. They began to build upon the mounds that were discovered through their research, with the storehouse or record house where the records are still to be uncovered, or perhaps they have been uncovered and they're just being covered up. There is a chamber, a passage from the right forepaw to the entrance of the record chamber or the record tomb. The readings explain that the monuments were unearthed and added to from time to time. Many were buried beneath the shifting sand. And our good friend David over at DAP 2030 has talked about how at certain time periods, especially the time period we're going into now with the changing ecology, the changing weather patterns, this portion, northern Africa, is going to be a breadbasket, and it's going to bloom again. And as we speak, there's conflict going on in Libya over the oil fields, which are one of the most productive proven reservoirs, as well as in Venezuela. That's another one. And again, if we're going to be cooling off, it's going to be around the equator where you're going to be productive. So very interesting stuff. We began to suspect that the first pyramids may have been flat on top, and there may have been added to at a later date. One pyramid in particular, Khafra, appeared to have been constructed of two sections with two distinct construction styles still visible today. And you could say, what happened? Something crumbled? But why is it outcropping higher? Is this just all gave way and fell away over the years? That's a logical thought. Or was it flat? In Mesopotamia, over in Central America, Mesoamerica, we do see a lot more flat tops. And when we look over to Mesopotamia and Sumeria, we see ziggurats, which again are flat tops. Coincidentally, do you remember the info that you got when you were channeling about the pyramids?
No, I don't.
Well, you said that there was a top portion that would actually fly, that they would come down and land on and then take off from.
That sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, sometimes when she's channeling and she's being kind of a full open channel, she does not aware of what she says later on. But she was saying that at 3 a.m. about 2 nights ago. And it was kind of interesting because she's just, giving this info, and I wake up and I'm listening, and like, who am I listening to here? Sometimes it's Laurel. Often it's Laurel, which is a Pleiadian entity that communicates with us. But yeah, so what she got was that, originally the top part was actually more of a flying vehicle that would come down and land and leave the base there. And it does make sense with the ziggurats that we have over in Mesopotamia as well. It's very interesting stuff. And so Cayce talked all about this, and perhaps they're going to give us a little bit of info. Maybe they'll give us a little bit. They've been hiding stuff forever. Maybe it's part of the times that we are in. So another of the key monuments is the Sphinx. When describing it, Cayce sometimes called it the mystery, as if that was what it was called in ancient Egypt. We began our research by searching ancient Egyptian texts for that word, and we found that there are many places in the Theban recension of the Book of the Dead, 3 volumes written in hieroglyphics, which include the word mystery. That was the genesis of our research. After many years of study and comparison of texts and star charts, we eventually discovered there was an astronomical correlation to the Sphinx. From the Edgar Cayce readings, we learned that the Sphinx monument was later set as a guard. We discovered a star constellation known in Egypt as a Sphinx. And this meant that the Edgar Cayce readings may have been referencing both the Sphinx monument and the Sphinx star constellation. This in position lies as the sun rises from the waters. The line of the shadow or light falls between the paws of the Sphinx that was later set as a sentinel or guard. So that's referencing the Sphinx monument on the ground, and which the sealed room may not be entered from the connecting chambers from the Sphinx paw, the right paw, until the time has been fulfilled when the changes must be active in the sphere of man's experience. This is referencing the constellation that was in a certain position on the sky at a certain date and a certain time. So the other Sphinx, the ancient Egyptians imagined one constellation as a Sphinx. Today, we call it Centaurus, since the Greeks later imagined that it was a centaur. There is a zodiac in the temple of Essen in Letopolis that show the illustration of the Sphinx in the place of the constellation Centaurus. So this suggests that there was a Sphinx constellation before the Sphinx monument was created. Both civilizations imagined that the constellation represented a being with the head of a man and the body of a quadruped. The constellation perfectly fits with the illustration of the Sphinx from the zodiac of Essen. And so, is it referencing perhaps where some certain ETs came from originally?
Yeah, that's what I'm feeling. It's a map, a star map of where they're from, perhaps.
It's fascinating stuff. So the big thing that hit me was talk of secret tunnels and this large discovery of all these sealed sarcophagi and the timing of what we have going on right now. And so it's all fascinating. Like the dates they give us of the pyramids, we know that they're not right. They're way off. And many people have talked about the weathering that we've seen on the Sphinx and the fact that it must be at least perhaps 10,000 years older than what people are saying. It had to have been weathered at a time when the area was lush and more like a tropical rainforest. And then we have to go all the way back to, the last big cataclysm, more in the Younger Dryas period, to have that. So then we're talking, almost 12,000 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much information that's just barely being uncovered. I feel this is just scratching the surface.
And I feel like, again, Edgar Cayce had a lot of amazing information. Timelines off, most definitely. But at the same time, we can't deny what we're seeing right now. Because what we're seeing now is what he envisioned to happen before 2000 came. So perhaps our consciousness has delayed some of the more serious events. Perhaps as we raise more and more consciousness and more people, we can put off some more of those events so that they perhaps will be a little bit gentler. I do think the biggest danger to mankind right now is mankind and those that are ruling it at the upper levels and even above those. Which, those people which are truly just pawns when you get down to it.
Well, they are, they want us in a low vibration, and we just can't accept that.
So guys, as always, thank you for your support on Patreon and Ko-Fi. If you want to reach out to us to set up an appointment, feel free to evolutionaryenergyarts@gmail.com or EEARTS@protonmail.com. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.